A quiet college town was shaken to its core when a student mysteriously vanished in the middle of the night. She had been safe in her own home only hours earlier, but by dawn, she was gone, leaving behind a trail of questions and a community desperate for answers. What began as a missing person case soon unfolded into a chilling story that would grip the entire nation. Eve Carson was born on November 19, 1985, in Athens, Georgia. From childhood, she was known for her ambition, dedication, and determination. Even as a teenager, she stood out for her leadership skills and willingness to help others. In high school, she served as vice president of the student council, spent countless hours volunteering at a nursing home and a shelter for teens in crisis, and somehow managed to work as a congressional page. On top of that, she even gained experience in a stem cell research lab, all before graduating. By the time she finished school, Eve had already built a resume most adults would envy. Naturally, she graduated with honors and earned admission to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. There, she took on a double major in political science and biology, supported by a prestigious scholarship. True to her nature, she didn't limit herself to academics alone. Eve thrived as a campus leader, quickly becoming a key figure in various student organizations and community projects. Her commitment to helping others was remarkable. She taught science lessons to children in elementary schools, and her volunteer spirit extended far beyond US borders. Eve spent a summer in Ecuador working alongside doctors, studied abroad in Cuba, and joined a research team in Egypt. By her early 20s, she had already touched lives across 3 continents. Everyone who knew her believed she was destined for great things. Even before graduation, Eve had secured a job offer at a major company and was preparing to step confidently into the next stage of her life. But those dreams would never come true. By February 2008, Eve was 22 years old and living with close friends in an off-campus house. On the night of March 5th, her roommates were getting ready to attend a late-night party. Around 1:30 a.m., they asked Eve to come along, but she politely declined, choosing instead to stay in and study for her upcoming classes. They left without her, expecting to see her when they returned. At about 4:30 in the morning, her roommates walked back into the house, only to feel something was very wrong. The front door stood wide open, the lights were still on, and Eve was nowhere to be found. Even more unsettling, her car had disappeared too. Why would she leave in the middle of the night, without locking the door? They tried calling her phone, but there was no answer. At first, they hoped she had simply stepped out unexpectedly and would return soon. But as the hours passed, that hope began to fade. By the next day, with still no sign of Eve, her friends decided it was time to contact the police. That decision would soon lead to a heartbreaking discovery. Investigators listened to the details of the disappearance and then revealed something shocking. Earlier that same morning, they had found the body of a young woman, but her identity was still unknown. When they showed one of Eve's friends a photo of the victim, recognition was instant. The woman was Eve. According to reports, just after 5 a.m., police had received a call from a resident living about a mile away from Eve's home. The caller had been awakened by the sound of multiple gunshots, followed by a chilling scream. Alarmed, she contacted authorities. When officers arrived, they found a young woman lying on the ground. She had been shot several times, and there were no personal belongings with her. No phone, no ID, nothing. With her identity confirmed, detectives began piecing together a timeline. At 1:30 a.m., Eve was at home studying. By 5 a.m., her body was found on a quiet street just a mile away. The key question was, what happened in those missing hours? Her car was still unaccounted for, so investigators leaned toward a robbery motive. That suspicion grew stronger when her roommates confirmed that Eve's wallet and credit cards were missing too. However, medical examiners ruled out sexual assault, narrowing the motive further. Police checked Eve's phone records and discovered that her device had last pinged a cell tower near the highway outside town. The phone itself, however, was never recovered. Detectives suspected the killer had tossed it somewhere remote. Then came the first real break. A car matching Eve's description was located a few miles from her home. The vehicle was quickly impounded for forensic testing. Meanwhile, Eve's computer revealed another clue. Her laptop showed activity until about 3:30 a.m., meaning she had remained at home 2 full hours after her roommates left. Somehow, in the hours after that, she ended up a mile away, dead. The shocking news rippled across the University of North Carolina. Eve wasn't just another student. She was widely known, deeply admired, and involved in nearly every corner of campus life. Students and faculty alike were stunned. Fear began spreading too. If someone like Eve could be targeted, no one felt safe. Leads began pouring into the police station. Students reported anything suspicious they could think of, hoping to aid the case. But despite the flood of tips, investigators struggled to make progress. Then, a major clue surfaced. Since Eve's credit cards were missing, detectives checked her bank account activity. What they found changed everything. Just 18 minutes after Eve last used her computer, 2 withdrawals totaling $700 were made from her account. The transactions occurred at an ATM on the far side of town. Security footage revealed something chilling. A man sitting in Eve's car, using her card at the ATM. In the back seat, the shadow of another person was faintly visible, possibly Eve herself. Unfortunately, the image quality was too poor to confirm. Investigators realized they might be dealing with more than just a robbery. The investigation into Eve Carson's tragic death continued to intensify. Detectives knew her killers had taken her credit cards and used them to withdraw cash at several ATMs. That financial trail was now the key to unlocking the mystery. After the first $700 withdrawal, police discovered attempts to take out more money across different parts of the city. But most of those ATMs either had no security cameras or had footage too grainy to provide useful details. Then, on March 7th, another lead appeared. Around 12:30 a.m., an ATM located inside a convenience store captured a suspect trying to withdraw money using Eve's card. This time, investigators noticed something surprising. The person on camera was not the same man from the first ATM video. This indicated at least 2 individuals were using her cards, and possibly both were involved in her murder. Detectives released both sets of surveillance images to the public, hoping someone would recognize the men. The case had already drawn national attention, and within days, tips began flooding in. On March 12th, a breakthrough arrived. An anonymous caller identified one of the men in the second video as Dario Atwater, a 21-year-old with a long criminal history. Police quickly dug into his background and discovered a troubling past: robbery charges, drug offenses, assault, and repeated encounters with law enforcement. Despite his extensive record, he had often been released early from custody. Even more alarming, investigators found that just 2 days after Eve's murder, Atwater had been scheduled to appear in court on weapons charges. Reviewing his mugshots, detectives confirmed a strong match with the man in the convenience store footage. They moved quickly. Atwater lived near the convenience store and was taken in for questioning. He denied any involvement, but the video evidence was strong enough to keep him in custody. Detectives then turned their attention to Atwater's circle. Phone records revealed that he was in frequent contact with a 17-year-old named Lawrence Leavitt. Leavitt already had a juvenile criminal history, despite his young age. When detectives pulled up his mugshot, they immediately recognized him as the man driving Eve's car in the first ATM video. Leavitt, however, was not easy to arrest. When officers arrived at his home, he refused to come out, barricading himself inside. The situation escalated to the point that a SWAT team had to be called in. Eventually, Leavitt was taken into custody. Like Atwater, he also denied involvement. Now, with both suspects in custody, the challenge shifted to building a solid case. Neither man was cooperating, but investigators had phone data placing them near Eve's neighborhood on the night of the murder. That evidence, combined with the ATM withdrawals and car footage, created a damning picture. Detectives concluded that the two had randomly targeted Eve. Late that night, they spotted her at home and decided to strike. They broke in, armed with guns, and forced her into her own car. From there, they drove her around the city, using her ATM card to withdraw as much cash as possible. After reaching the $700 daily limit, they drove her to a secluded area where they executed her. The brutality of the crime horrified the community. Prosecutors announced they would pursue the death penalty for Atwater. For Leavitt, being a minor, the maximum sentence possible was life in prison. As the trial approached, prosecutors made a strategic decision. They offered Atwater a deal: plead guilty and avoid the death penalty. Facing overwhelming evidence, Atwater accepted. His confession painted a haunting picture. He admitted that on the night of March 5th, Leavitt called him to propose committing a robbery. They set out looking for a target and soon spotted Eve inside her home. They entered, threatened her with guns, and forced her to leave with them. Throughout the ordeal, Eve pleaded for her life, promising she wouldn't reveal their identities if they let her go. But neither man wore a mask. Atwater confessed they decided to kill her for that very reason. Before her death, Eve even asked them to pray with her. Instead, they coldly executed her, firing multiple shots. In April 2010, Atwater was sentenced to life in prison without parole, plus 30 additional years. In court, he turned to Eve's parents and expressed regret, admitting he deserved his punishment. Leavitt, however, refused to plead guilty. His trial began in December 2011. Despite his defense attorney's efforts, the combination of Atwater's confession, cell phone records, and ATM footage proved too strong. The jury found Leavitt guilty, and he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. But the story didn't end there. In 2013, the North Carolina Court of Appeals overturned Leavitt's sentence, citing a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that mandatory life without parole for juveniles was unconstitutional. Leavitt was granted a new sentencing hearing. During that hearing, he spoke to the court, insisting he was not the monster people thought he was, and that everyone makes mistakes. Yet he displayed little genuine remorse. Ultimately, the judge once again sentenced him to life in prison. Interestingly, Leavitt was also suspected in another, eerily similar case. Just months before Eve's murder, a graduate student named Abhijit Mahato had been killed in his apartment. Like Eve's case, money was withdrawn from his account afterward. Although Leavitt was investigated, authorities never secured enough evidence to charge him. Eve's murder did more than devastate her friends and family. It sparked real change. In 2008, North Carolina lawmakers passed tougher laws aimed at cracking down on gang-related activity, directly inspired by Eve's case. At her university, she was remembered not for the way her life ended, but for the way she lived. A scholarship was created in her honor, and a memorial garden was built on campus to preserve her legacy. Her influence reached even further. In 2009, one of Eve's close friends appeared as a finalist on American Idol. During the show, he spoke openly about how Eve's death had inspired him to take chances in life. Without her, he said, he never would have had the courage to pursue his dream. Even years later, Eve Carson's story continues to resonate. She was a bright young woman with limitless potential, whose kindness touched countless lives. Her murder was a tragedy, but the legacy she left behind remains powerful. A reminder of the fragility of life, the cruelty of violence, and the importance of justice. For those who followed the case, it was not just about crime and punishment. It was about a community coming together to honor the memory of someone who embodied hope, ambition, and compassion. Eve's light was extinguished too soon. But the changes her life and death inspired ensure she will never be forgotten. And so, the story of Eve Carson stands as both a heartbreaking cautionary tale and a lasting inspiration. Eve's story is a reminder of how precious and fragile life is. If you want to hear more cases like this, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And let us know in the comments what you think about this case. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant.